Hey, what's going on? My name is Jonah Fox, and in this video, I want to talk to you about image streaming, kind of explain to you how I understand it at this point. Now, image streaming is a visualization practice, and it's something that people who do not have a good ability to visualize or no ability at all can maybe follow to gain an ability to visualize. And it's something that people who can normally visualize in their mind's eye can explore their imagination in a very different way. Because what separates image streaming from how I understand it, and trust me, I'm no expert, I'm going through this myself and kind of just sharing to you what I'm learning, is that when people normally daydream, they are kind of like directing a movie in their mind, right? They're making the choices. It's kind of the language of the ego, it's like plans for the future and, visualizing particular scenes, right? But image streaming is like a flow of deeply unconscious images. And you can learn to get this stream started by engaging with a practice of closing your eyes, and you start to describe using all of your five senses what you're actually seeing in your visual field. And for some people, this might be pretty much nothing. It was for me when I started. And for some people, this might be already detailed like imagination. I don't understand how everyone's imagination works, right? Mine does not seem to work in the same way that it does some of my friends, as an example, or my dad. But my mom, she kind of visualizes like me. So you can kind of see what I'm saying. It's like we have different ways that I think we normally visualize. And image streaming is just one avenue to explore kind of a unique style of visualization. And what makes it so interesting to me personally is not the things that the original creator of this practice was really focusing on, like cognitive enhancement, where I think it does make me smarter. It's just not why I care. What makes it interesting to me is that image streaming is like unleashing a torrent of deeply symbolic and fascinating and weird and sometimes mystical and sometimes hilarious imagery that you are not in conscious control of. And that's, I think, what makes it so different. Like, I can close my eyes right now and I'll see something, and that'll be like, just like, that was kind of interesting and amusing. So let me give you an example, okay? I was streaming the other day, and I was going through this practice. Now, let me explain how it actually works. And I'm not going to go into all of the different things of how you can start this. There's some practices that will help you get started. But if you might be able to just be successful with what I tell you right now. So essentially, you close your eyes and you look at the black of your visual field. Now, you might notice some kind of wisps and phosphenes and I'm not 100% sure on all the language of what's understood about what actually goes on with your eyes closed, but you'll start seeing some visual static, some visual noise, right? And then you try your best to associate that visual noise with something that is actually tangible, an actual scene or something that you're experiencing, right? So if I close my eyes right now, I see a man holding a diamond in his fingers. I don't know. That's just, I wasn't consciously trying to create that, but that's what I saw right now. And so when you see an image like that, you start describing it, and you want to describe it quickly, okay? And you also want to describe it not like the idea of what it is. So it's less useful to say this is a diamond, and it's more useful to say, in my hands, I'm holding a small jewel that glows bright blue, and it has these sharp edges where it was cut, and you can feel the smoothness on the edges, and it has this kind of sterile smell to it. And like, you start explaining this with as much sense data as humanly possible. Now, obviously, you're not going to go and taste a diamond, so you can't like use all of these terms all of the time, right? But you want to move it away from just being in the visual and also describe things with all of your different senses. So we're talking taste and touch and smell and sight and sound, but also like kinesthetic feelings that you have in your own body, emotions, or something that's kind of palpable, like you sweating or something like that. So you want to just use as much of this kind of terminology and describe it all in present tense, in the moment, and very fast. Now, it sounds really difficult, and on some level it is difficult, but it's weird. Like, you can kind of get used to it. Like, I have learned to image stream, and I can kind of just get into this state pretty quickly. And the more I do it, it's like a muscle. It gets stronger and stronger, and the images get more and more vivid. Now, one thing I noticed for myself, and again, I'm not saying that your mind is going to work like this, but when I start, like even every single session, my images are relatively indistinct. Like I got to really fight to figure out what the first few things are. But then at a certain point, the images just start coming, and they start coming really fast, and they get more vivid and more intense, but they're not always at the same intensity all the time. So like sometimes they'll fade out to black, and then I'll see an image that's really vivid. So let me give you an example. Okay. The other day I was doing this, and I usually listen to music during the experience, and I always start off with a simple breathing exercise. So I just do, it's very simple. This is kind of similar to the technique. This is a thing created by Wenger, and the way that he explains is he calls it velvety smooth breathing. I don't know, like it's kind of similar enough to what I do. And I learned this from a meditation teacher, which is you just breathe in through your nose, like for 5 seconds. And you exhale for 5 seconds. And you can start extending this. So like 5, maybe 6, maybe 7. So you just start pushing it. But the thing is, you do not stop breathing. And essentially you will learn to like slow your breathing down. So it's like, kind of slow like this. So I do a couple minutes of this, and I'll notice that, it'll kind of get me more comfortable with the strange kind of discomfort that is image streaming. It's not uncomfortable, but it's pretty intense for your mind, right? So it kind of makes me a little bit more willing to sit through the whole experience and be patient to let the stream start. And it also gets some of those kind of floaty, wispy shapes started, at least for me. And so I'll go and do this for a couple minutes. I usually do about 5 minutes of this. And then after that, I just start explaining some of these images. A lot of times I listen to music. Like I found like very textural music, like, something like Spangle that people like listen to and they trip on psychedelics, like that kind of music. That's to me like what inspires the most visuals. And I put on this music and I'll start describing things. So like a couple days ago, this is going to be fun. It started off really simple in my session. Like I was imagining myself at the wheel of a car. And so I was like describing like the feeling of holding the steering wheel and what I was seeing out the window, and like a kind of stale cigarette smell that I could smell, and, the wind that I feel on my face from the AC, and coldness that I felt in that space. And so I like kind of going through this, and that like went on for a couple minutes, right? And and kind of like the different places that I'm driving. And as I was like driving this car in my mind, I'm seeing new things, new different buildings. And some of them were really surprising and really kind of interesting, but that was like kind of whatever, right? And that fades off to black. The song ends. A lot of times when the song ends for me, like I lose the image. And so the song ends, I lose the image, it goes out to black, and I'm like, okay, I lost that. And then I start to see something again, and I'm like, I see a little monkey, right? It's a little tiny monkey, long arms, long tail, like, it's a monkey. And I see it kind of like running in like kind of like a forest floor, and I can see all the roots and the grass here, and I'm describing the monkey and describing the grass and the smell of the forest, right? And then all of the sudden, that scene shifts, and now the monkey is swinging in a tree, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's just like a swinging monkey. It was just kind of interesting to watch and explore. And I'm describing it the whole time through. And then this was the day that there was that massive heist at the Louvre in France where the French crown jewels got stolen. And so I get another image again, right? And I'm sitting in a cafe, and like, I know it's me. I'm in a cafe. I'm holding a ceramic mug of coffee, and I'm looking at the coffee, and I'm like smelling. I'm like talking about smelling the coffee and the feeling of the like kind of this holding the mug and the weight of it, and what it looked like in the cafe, and the different like kind of like rainbowy kind of art that's on the walls, and looking outside and seeing the street beyond it. And then all of a sudden, the monkey from the previous image pops up. It's holding a donut, and it's wearing the French crown jewels, and it dunks its donut in the coffee, and it sprays everywhere, and the monkey just goes, ah! And so check this picture out. This is what I saw in my mind. I mean, come on, isn't that awesome, right? So that's like image streaming. That's what the experience is for me. Like sometimes it's funny like that, and sometimes it's like weirdly symbolic, and I don't really know what my brain is trying to tell me, because I think the understanding that I have now is that this is like subconscious fueled imagery. And if you go back to the original documentation on this in the book, The Einstein Factor by Wenger, and some other books that have been written on the subject. There's one that I'm reading right now by Charles Roman, and I'll link both books down below in the description. But I was, I was reading through these books, and a lot of the point of the books really is that you can access this subconscious imagery, and yeah, it's fun and stuff like that, but you can use it to get smarter, right? You can use it to, let's say, analyze all the symbolism and come up with maybe some sort of deeper answers that your subconscious knows, but your conscious mind does not know. I think that's fascinating. But honestly, I think for me, what's most interesting about this experience is that it's unexpected and weird and kind of beautiful. And I mean, I've seen, distinct memories that I was not able to consciously visualize, right? But I've had, moments where I've been in an image stream and all of a sudden, I am, 6 years old in my grandma's house, and I can look at her carpet and the exact fibers that were pulled up on the carpet that have been clipped by someone who walked around, and the ticking of her grandfather clock with the gold kind of trim on the faceplate in the corner, and, just all of these kinds of things. And it's been really fascinating. And, so if you can't visualize, it's something that's worth giving a shot. Do that breathing and then close your eyes and see if you see any kind of wispiness, and start associating it with things. Now, I put a video on in this subject about a year ago, and I am reviving this channel. Like, if you've been waiting for this video, hey, I'm going to start talking about this publicly again. I don't know for how long, but I'm doing it right now. And in that video, I saw some misconceptions about what you should expect. Some people were trying to visualize a single image over and over for days and days and days. And I don't believe I ever said that. So let me just make it clear. The goal is not to create a particular image that you're trying to see in your mind. The goal is to take what you're actually seeing and then describe it. And then if that stuff changes, you describe what it changes to, and you describe it in present tense, quickly, with as many of your senses as you possibly can. And if you do this for 10 days, you give it a real shot, do 15 minutes a day, I'd be really surprised if you don't get any sense of improvement. And for some of you, this might totally change your life. It's really wild. I am an artist, I'm an oil painter, and I've used some of these images as inspiration for some paintings that I've made. If you're a writer, it could give you ideas of different images and scenes that you're kind of seeing. So you can mine this for inspiration, or you can just kind of view this as an interesting intellectual practice. It's kind of like meditation plus a dream or psychedelic-ish hallucinatory state that you can access while you're sober, that has the added benefit of actually making you smarter. I feel when I'm image streaming, I am at my most articulate, and I have the easiest time thinking through complex ideas. And that's what I'm doing right now. And I can even notice, even after doing it for a week, I'm only a week back into this thing, that I'm oh yeah, I'm getting sharper the more that I do this. And so you may also experience that too. Most people who currently practice this today are looking at that cognitive enhancement angle, which I think is interesting. It's not as actually viscerally fun and wild and mysterious as a real image streaming session is. So that's what image streaming is. I hope you give it a shot. If you want to learn much more about it, go check my original video. It's pretty long, and I talk about a lot more. I give you more examples and different practices you can do to get this started. And I'll continue to make videos on this channel, just continuing to explore this. And I just want to be clear, I am not a master at this. I am one of the few people in the world that knows what this is and maybe has the skill to communicate it to you. So I'm going to go and do that. So I'm not promising that I'm going to cure your aphantasia, or, this may or may not work for you. Try it and just see what happens. And if it does work, or even if it doesn't work, hey, let me know in the comments. I actually legitimately want to know, because I'm exploring this thing alongside with you. So that's it for this video. Here's the big deep dive video that I think you'll be interested in if you want to hear a longer, more in-depth explanation of this, and I'll see you next time. Peace.